whereby we, the ability, like Eckhart Tolle calls it a witnessing presence. Yeah. That makes sense. Well, first, it's okay.
Okay.
But when I say you're where I want you to go, that is, the point is to realize that you can observe your own thinking. You can stand back and just, all of a sudden it's there. Or you can feel like you're connected to source and observe what's going on in your mind. I believe that the creative ways that you are getting information, like through color, the ability to...
Nanci, I want to talk about your beyond death or near-death experience so that we can learn about it as much as possible. I prefer that you just give us a synopsis from a chronological viewpoint of what the events were that led up to, and then the events of your beyond death or near-death experience.
The one event that led up to it was I was at the James Cancer Hospital for an excisional biopsy of my right breast. And because I didn't have a lump that could be felt, I had calcium deposits. The only way the surgeon would know where to cut was by use of a mammogram, which would show the calcium deposits on film. So there's a procedure called a needle localization procedure that a radiologist performs, where the radiologist sticks a needle in to the area that the surgeon's supposed to cut around, and then pulls the needle out and leaves a wire in place. So that's the marker. It was in the course of, I think we went through that whole process twice. The second time, after the radiologist and the technician left to get the 8th set of mammogram films developed, right after they left, I did too. I was just sitting there in a chair, and I knew I was going to pass out or faint or something. And I tried to yell for somebody. Once I realized I couldn't do it, I just went with it. I went into the light, as all near-death experiencers do. I spent a lot of time in the light just having knowledge deposited into my mind. I call them knowings. I briefly saw my physical body back in the mammography room below me. I knew at that point that I was dead. It had not occurred to me before then. I spent a little bit of time manifesting physical reality and understanding that we do in fact manifest what humans experience as physical reality. I then met 5 beings of light who were my dearest friends, and I recognized them. And they said to me that they ran ahead of the rest of us to welcome me home. And I understood at the point that they said the rest of us, that they meant the source, because all of us are one being within source. I also understood at that point that that's where I had been prior to this incarnation into this body. I had completed all my incarnations into physical form. I had evolved my way back to the source. I had dissolved into the source, and I no longer existed as a separate personality. But for some reason, when the source was asking for volunteers, for people to come here to help with this transition to the next epoch, I said, pick me, and here I am.
Those 5 bodies of light, were those people you knew in this life?
No, they were my, I guess people would call them a soul group. They were the entities who were thought of at the same time I was, and I had spent my eternal life with them.
It sounds like they comforted and reassured you. Did they advise you?
No. In fact, they didn't comfort or reassure me. What they wanted is they wanted the scoop. They wanted the story of my life. They wanted to see and live and experience what I had just experienced as Nanci, because they had not been in a physical body for ages and ages.
So you were on the incoming bus, and they wanted to take that bus and turn it around and go back out.
It was a new movie on an island where there had only been one movie for ages and ages. They experienced my life, and while they were doing that, and it was during a life review, but it wasn't the kind of life review that other near-death experiencers get, because it wasn't for my benefit, it was for theirs. While they were doing that, I fused back into the rest of my energy. I got back all my eternal memories, all the hundreds and thousands of physical lives I had lived as all different kinds of beings. And I got the more complete access to universal knowledge. I'd been getting, downloads of what I call knowings all along.
All along when?
During my near-death experience.
During this
as soon as I got into the light.
Okay.
Yeah, as soon as I got into the light, I started getting the knowings.
Time made no difference. It could have been 20 minutes, but it could have been 20 years. It didn't make any difference that way?
My understanding is that I lived. I mean, I completely died. I was gone from this life, and I was living in what we call the afterlife and progressing through levels of evolution very quickly, because I'd done it all before, very quickly, just so I could get my vibration level up high enough that I could merge back into the source.
Mm-hmm.
And then my understanding is I would have dissolved into the source and been a separate personality no longer.
Mm-hmm.
But when I got this access to the rest of universal knowledge, or the entire range of it, I was feeling very cheated during my human life, that all of this simple, loving wisdom had been withheld from me, that I had been indoctrinated in religious traditions that had nothing to do with what I was experiencing as true reality of our afterlife. And so I asked universal knowledge, what's the purpose of religion, in human life? And in response to that, I saw kind of like a documentary of the entire history of the planet Earth. After seeing that, I was becoming more and more distraught with the level of information that is routinely available to people while they're in human bodies, and how unfair it was that they didn't know the simple truth as I saw it during my near-death experience. So as I was still on the train, progressing back to the source. After seeing the documentary, the next level of evolution after what we call heaven is you continue to live, but without any kind of beingness to you. It's just an entirely mental existence. So I merged into my 5 light being friends. That's how you get experiences at that level. You don't physically have them yourself. You just borrow by virtual reality somebody else's. And I lived their multitudes of lives and experienced their emotions and their thoughts and everything as them. Then the 6 of us formed a cohesive being of 6, and I experienced oneness out of 6. And then we moved into the source, and I merged into the source. And as I was merging through, it's kind of like your vibrations rising, so it's kind of like through layers. I experienced the source, and I was still thinking, gee, I could have done a better job at this life, and I really wish that people back on Earth knew what I'm now aware of. And I got this intense feeling from the source that even though it was my time to leave this life, and even though I was supposed to dissolve back into the source, that it loved me enough to allow me to make the choice to come back here. And zoom, I was sent back to my body, kicking and screaming the whole way. Then when I got back into the body, it was difficult getting in. Eventually I was able to say to the doctor, I passed out. And then they started, taking care of me and watched me like a hawk after that.
Do you have any idea how many minutes had passed?
No, all I know is that they left to get films developed, and we had been at it, poking my breast with a needle for more than an hour, like close to an hour and a half. So I'm guessing they might have taken a break. So they were gone minutes, but how many, I have no idea.
And you do remember distinctly being given this choice then?
Oh, yes.
And as soon as you made that commitment in your mind, bingo, it happened.
Yes.